Here we
Hello and welcome to my show, The Awakening, here on WGSN-DB, the Going Bold and Going Solo Network. The information and opinions expressed on this show are just that, the opinions of the individual speaking based on their individual personal experiences. They are not intended to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. So you know the pain, stress, and struggle that divorcing men and women go through. Well, there is a way to find peace and sanity and assist your lawyer all in the legal process. This saves you thousands of dollars. My name is Tina. I'm your divorce coach, professional divorce planning specialist, restorative family mediator, and conflictual co-parenting coach. So today I'm joined by Sinta Ebersohn, and we're going to butcher it again. Go ahead and say it for us properly.
Ebersohn.
Ebersohn.
Here
And,
we go.
and I should be able to say that a little bit better because I do have a little bit of German in the background that I speak. But anyways, we're joined here by Sinta. Sinta is globally acknowledged and respected. She is a pioneering voice in the field of post-traumatic growth. With decades of lived and professional experience, she empowers individuals, families, and the workforce to turn adversity into strength and disruption into transformation. So I am truly honored to have you here, Sinta. So can you kind of explain what the post-traumatic stress is so that our viewers kind of have an understanding?
Thanks, Tina, for having me. I'm very honored to be here. I think anybody who's gone through a divorce needs what and knows what trauma is and the stress of that specifically. We're not strangers to that at all. But post-traumatic growth means, to me, what we do with that traumatic experience, how we integrate the life lessons that we learn, and how we grow from that.
Yes. And I when I was kind of reading through your bio, and I literally could go back to points in my life where, because of my divorce and some of the things that happened in my marriage, brought about PTSD, post-traumatic stress. And
Mm.
and I think that many of us experience that, whether we've learned to label that yet or not. But one of the situations that happened in my marriage is my husband, my ex-husband, grabbed my wrist. And I'm not one to like to fight, and especially to go through the screaming and yelling and the belittling that happened. And so I was getting ready to leave the room, and he grabbed my wrist and I released it because I was a trained martial artist, and I ended up hitting the door jamb in the process, breaking the back of my hand. And then he threw me on the bed and stuck his knee in my chest. And so years down the road, I was dating somebody else, and he went to, it wasn't fight induced or anything. There was a little bit of friction, but he went to grab my hand, not really my wrist, but I instantly pulled back, and I can remember the effect. It wasn't like I even had a choice. It just happened.
Mhm. It's almost like a reflex. And also, of course, with your martial arts training, you learn how to do these things literally without thinking, because if it's a really threatening situation, you have to do that. You can't hesitate for a moment. But yeah, we have memories that trigger us later in life when we find ourselves in similar situations. And post-traumatic stress disorder is just that. It's when we carry the things over from the past experiences, and they show up in our current lives in weird and wonderful ways because we haven't dealt with them fully.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's all kinds of situations that I can kind of go back to that had some form of PTSD. So for me, and so we're going to get into how you help people change this into something positive, because I have worked on this, not with you, but I have worked on this for a long time. And so now I am noticing that I've learned little tricks like Mel Robbins talks about the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You turn around and do something different than what you're doing. And Mine isn't quite like that I do that, but I take a deep breath and I count to 5. And then I think about what I'm going to say or do in the context of a confrontation or what could be a confrontation. So kind of tell us a little bit about how you work and how that works in your field.
I have to say we are fortunate because there are so many people all over the world who work with trauma and specifically PTSD and post-traumatic growth. So there are endless sources where we can get information. There are so many processes and modalities and kinds of therapies and things, for us to choose amongst that we actually, living in a very fortunate time. I have deducted from all my studies and my lived experience and working with clients over many years, some processes that I find work quite effectively. But saying that, I must also stress that it's really unique for every person. There's no one recipe that works for everyone. So I have to get to know my client thoroughly to understand which process or therapy or principles or theories would work best for them. But I have developed my own get up and grow process, which makes room for adjusting for every individual. And it basically consists of 4 steps. The first step is the get step, and that's working around gaining a thorough understanding of what has happened, what is happening to me, what that impact is on me, and how it affects the people close to me, the people around me. Once I have a thorough understanding of that here in my head, then I can move on to what I call the up phase. And the up to me means I update my system, literally like we would update our software of our computers or our phones. So I update my system with the knowledge that I've gained or the insight that I've gained, and I upgrade myself. So we figure out what the life lessons are that lie in these experiences. And in doing that, we can, conclude that I might benefit from CBT, or I might benefit from a bit of neuro-linguistic programming, or EMI, or whatever there is. Some of the things I'm trained to do myself, and others I will refer to one of my colleagues to do that. But it's only once we have that thorough understanding, so we get the situation, and when we start looking at how and where we can update to upgrade ourselves, that we really know what our needs are. So I can't just go to a psychologist for therapy. Somebody who doesn't know divorce, somebody who might not have experienced divorce themselves, it must be somebody who specializes in it, or like a divorce coach like you are. I've been a divorce mentor for many years. We need to understand the specific dynamics of that and then apply the best system or process to that person. So once we've done that, then the and in the get up and grow, the and stands for I adapt or I adjust to my circumstances, or I adapt to the changed circumstances or what my future is going to look like, the new situation. The N is for navigate. Then I navigate through that and I work out how to navigate through that. And the D is for I direct or divert whatever is needed in the situation. And then we get to the grow. When we've done all those 3 steps in the beginning and we look back and we evaluate and we assess and we see how we apply, we learn from that and we repeat it. It's literally a step 1, 2, 3, 4, and we repeat that. And it's a process that we can do or apply anywhere in our lives with any adversity, any hardship, any challenge, any traumatic experience that I have found through the years that work very well. So I do the get up and grow process with my clients, but again, it's different for every person. It's not a fixed recipe. You need a holistic approach and a really wide view of what can work, what is out there that is available that works for people. And then, of course, something that I specifically specialize in a lot, I enjoy doing it, is the high conflict situations, the really challenging things. I also have a process where I teach people a couple of tricks and systems to deal with conflict effectively, especially the really, really bad stuff when there's aggression or victimization or alienation, intimate partner abuse, that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And as you know, I deal with the abuse end of things, and whether it has been physical abuse, but in all cases, you know, physical abuse, all of it roots down to the psychological abuse that starts.
Mm-hmm.
Alienation, the control, manipulation, those types of things that start. And they, you know, I just wrote a little bit, I'm writing a book. And so I was writing in that chapter,
Mm-hmm.
and I was writing about that manipulation. And when we're going through our dating process, that's where it starts to show up. We
Yes.
just don't realize that it's starting to happen. And if we can be aware that these things are possibly starting to happen, we can keep an eye on them. The reality is, and I tell my clients this, is that in the abuse end is we can't change them. We can't change them. We can change us. We can learn to adapt like you are. And in some cases where the significant other is narcissistic,
Mm-hmm.
not always narcissistic, but they can come across narcissistic. But the person loves them and wants to keep them in their life. Maybe it's not a significant other, maybe it's a sibling or even a child or a parent. Well, then we, just as how you talk about that process, we have to learn how to adapt, set our own boundaries. And a lot of people don't understand boundaries. We can't set boundaries on the other person. We have to set boundaries and keep them ourselves. These boundaries are our boundaries and we have to enforce them. And so in what you're saying, it's very much the same way. We can't control the outside. We have to only and can only control ourselves.
Mm-hmm. It's the coercive control, the manipulation, the narcissistic abuse that happens is such a difficult thing because it's not tangible. It's not
Mhm.
easy to prove. And I find often that the stories of what people do, the really horrible things that people do, are unbelievable. They're like the things we find in the soap operas. People don't believe it, and they certainly don't understand it if they haven't experienced it themselves. So those are really tough things to work with. People, um, yeah, the whole world, there's still a lot of room for education and awareness to increase around those things. And also, I have to say that there are words that are thrown around these days. Every other person going through a divorce that I come across claims that their ex is a narcissist. And there is a clear difference. I think all of us exhibit some narcissistic traits from time to time, depending on the situation and how much stress we are under and how high the conflict is and all that sort of stuff. But to be a really, truly, properly screened and diagnosed person with narcissistic disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, is a completely different thing.
And you know, I've had clients come to me and tell me that their ex is a narcissist, and I will work with them 1 week or 2 weeks, and already I can tell you they're not.
Mm.
Um, they're a jerk, maybe.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
but we all can exhibit negative reactions to people or because of people or to people. And we can all do that. So we can all basically be narcissistic at times in our lives. And Annette Chesney, who's been on the show a couple of times, she's got what she calls a narc spectrum. And so it goes from 0 to 5. And a lot of really great people sit at 0, but can bounce up to 1 or 2 when they're
Yes.
put into a situation. We call that situational abuse. And
Mm.
situational abuse does not mean that the person is an abuser. Now, in my relationship with the broken hand and things, it was becoming that way. It was situational. That's how it started. And the longer it was going on, the worse it got, and the worse it was going to get. And we either needed professional help, marital counseling or coaching, or one of us needed to get out. or
Mm,
individual. And that's what happened with me is I went for individual therapy. And that's when I realized I needed to get out.
mm,
I was the problem. I was somewhat in his eyes, the instigator. And
mm,
and I wasn't. I would be home doing absolutely nothing when he'd come home intoxicated and blow up.
mm,
And I couldn't control that, but I could control me.
mm. It's like, you know, the expression that says it takes two to tango?
Mm-hmm.
It takes two to solve that problem or resolve the issues in that relationship. I had the similar experience. I ended up being the only one getting help and learning and growing, while my ex-husband just was not interested. As far as he was concerned, everything was my fault. So you can't stay in a relationship like that. If you don't grow together, if you're not heading in the same direction, or at least more or less in the same direction, you're just going to grow further apart. So there's no point in staying there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have lots of clients that beat themselves up afterwards. What did I do wrong? How could I have fixed it? And it, again, just like you just said, it takes two,
Mm,
and we have to work together. Now, I had stated earlier, if we have a difficult person in our lives, but we need to keep them or want to keep them in there, then again, we have to do the work. One, we have to recognize that their issues are not our fault. Their issues, even what they say are it's not our fault. We have to right away go, okay, this is whatever. So for instance, I have a friend who is he's an American veteran, and he had part of his leg blown up. So he goes through his own stages of PTSD.
mm,
And so recently he had a situation, and because I have worked with the vets quite a bit on dealing with that part in divorce and separate, because I do a lot of anti-suicide work with 22 a day. And what I have learned is that when they're going through that, it's hands off. You've got to let them, unless they've gone through their own work, doing their own work. If you're supporting them, it's hands off, words off. You can't help them. You can't talk them through that. All you can do is be present. And sometimes that's not close present. That's possibly folding clothes in the next room. And
mm,
he went through a situation. He had come to visit, and he went through a situation. That's why he came, is
mm,
because he was going through his thing. And so he got here, and he was having trouble remembering words. PTSD can cause all kinds of things. And so he
mm,
was having trouble. And so right away wanted to put a blame on something, and I was close. So I became
mm,
the blame. When we're in that situation, we have to go, okay, really, it's not about me. It wasn't me. And
mm,
so I left the room and did my thing. And pretty soon they apologized. They had stayed long enough that they were ready to leave, and felt that they were comfortable to leave. But those are types of things that PTSD causes and that we might see on the outside.
mm. Tina, I'd love to share with you how I explain boundaries to my clients. As I'm listening to you, I can see I'd love to share this with you because it helps to understand how we must manage our boundaries. Because what you spoke about, knowing that this is about me and that's not about me. Um, I always say it's like being a farmer uh, on my own farm. I know that there's a demarcated area that is my area where I farm, and I am also the person who decides what I do on there. Let's say, for example, I decide to keep some sheep and some chickens, and I grow wheat and barley, for example. I am in control of what I do on my farm. I decide when I feed the sheep, when I have to water the wheat, when I have to cut it off or reap it, or sell some of my sheep because there are too many of them, or buy in some food. I have to maintain the fence and make sure the gate works properly, just to give some examples.
Hmm.
So the farmers next door to me have their own setup in which they are in control, and they might farm with different things than I do. So if I use my intimate partner as an example, who farms right next to me, our boundaries join, but they never overlap. And I might farm sheep and chickens, and my partner might work with cattle, for example. So if I find cow dung on my farm, then I know it comes from the cattle next door. It doesn't come from me because I don't have cattle in my farm. If my partner finds eggs in his farm, he knows that egg comes from me because I'm the one with the chickens. And that's the same thing as the issues, the unresolved trauma, the problems, the behavioral patterns and things that we have. I need to understand myself and my own farm well enough so that I can identify what originates here on my farm and what comes from next door. And I also need to be able to be honest enough to identify when my chickens have strayed and they've gone into my partner's farm and they've gone to lay their eggs there, because that's not ideal. That's not what we want. So it's just a simple image that I always use to illustrate how we work with boundaries. But it means that we are in control of our own farm, and we have no control about our neighboring farms or our partners or the people close to us, although we touch sides. And although we might have certain things that are the same, or we have certain things in common, we must be clear about where they come from and who's responsible for them. So if my chickens stray, I am responsible to go and fetch them and bring them back. I'm responsible for maintaining the fence so they can't come out and go and cause a disturbance next door.
So I don't know whether you knew this, but I was raised on a farm. And so I'm going to help people see a little bit offside to that. So if we don't have boundaries, so in the state of Colorado, which is where I was raised, it is it's a free roaming state.
Yes.
So in other words, if you don't want your neighbor's cows on your property, you have to fence them out. So if you don't have boundaries, then those cows, the chickens, the everything can come onto your property and cause you problems, tear down your, eat your garden, do all of that kind of stuff. And it's not your neighbor's fault.
Yes.
That's where we have to understand. We have to put up those boundaries, build those fences to keep them out. And we have to enforce that fence to keep their cattle or sheep out from our property. And I think that I love, obviously, that you explained it like this, because I have actually seen what happens when you don't have your fences up or don't maintain those fences, and the neighbor's cows mix with your cows, and the fight that pursues because of this.
Yes.
So we have to make sure that we maintain those boundaries. And to me, maintaining boundaries really means keeping myself, my mental self, healthy.
And being very clear about who I want to be, where I want to be, what I will tolerate or allow and what I won't. That's where it starts.
And that boundaries are, really, that's what I work with my clients on probably the most is the boundaries, but not setting the boundaries, but keeping yourself healthy enough to keep the boundaries strong. And so we have to work on that. And so one of my clients actually told me something that she would do when she was out and about away from her husband when they were married, is that she would have this alter ego, and she'd go out as this alter ego, and she would talk about this alter ego. And so after she was finished telling me that story, I said, well, that's exactly what we need to do. We need to bring that alter ego here, because that alter ego is stronger than the person that's sitting here right now. So you need to become that alter ego. So it was a great analogy of how each of us have to help ourselves keep those boundaries.
And it's a constant job. It's a lifelong process. It's not something we do once off and then we've got it all sorted out. We need to work at it all the time because life changes and we change. So we need to reevaluate that and move the fences a bit, or put the gates in another place, or bring in some new stock or whatever it is, if I'm sticking to the farm analogy. But it's actually very exciting work to do, to increase our self-awareness when we work on our boundaries. It's empowering, but difficult and painful sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And therein lies the fact that we are not narcissists, because a true narcissist, one that could be diagnosed, refuses to
Yes.
accept responsibility. It's always somebody else's fault. They won't, not even once, accept responsibility for those things. And they blame you. And those types of people, if we choose to stay in that relationship, whatever that relationship looks like, and we're not taking care of ourselves, we won't make it through it. I know me in my relationship, and I, I don't know whether I would classify my ex-husband a low-level narcissist or not. But I know that had I stayed in that relationship, I would be dead. I would have probably taken my life because I wasn't taking good enough care of me. I was trying to grow, and he would cut the growth off. I would try to grow, and he'd cut the growth off. And part of that was fear that I was outgrowing him. And because he wouldn't grow with me, we did grow apart. And that's okay. I tell my clients that all the time. It's okay. That was the right thing at that moment. We needed what we've got. Now it's time for us to move to the next chapter.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it's my third step in the Get Up and Grow process, where I talk about adapting and adjusting. It's important to know that we must not adapt or adjust to the other person in the relationship. We adapt to who we want to become, who we choose to be going forward. And there's a distinct difference between the two. If we keep on adapting to our partner, we're minimizing ourselves and making ourselves smaller and smaller and smaller until there's nothing left,
Right,
unfortunately.
And that's where the suicidal ideation comes from, because I've worked with, suicide. I've helped in that arena since I was a child, because I had my own issues, and people would cut me off and wouldn't let me go. And finally, when I realized that, okay, if they're cutting me off, I have to move. I have to put my boundaries up, or just go out and buy a whole new lot of land and grow there. So that's what I did, is I bought a new lot of land and I moved. So in that kind of takes me into my client's next step. That is the taking care of themselves so they don't end up in this kind of relationship again.
Again, yeah, that's the probably one of the biggest dangers coming out of a divorce or a separation, especially if it's high conflict. If we don't do the work to figure out what went wrong there, or what mistakes we made, or how we neglected ourselves, we're just going to repeat it. So that's a very important work to do. I agree with you.
Yeah, yeah. And that understanding the boundaries, being able to become the person you want to be, the alter ego that you want to be, being able to be that person all the time, and that doesn't mean that it's 100% of the time, but when we're having a bad day, it's okay. So I lost my husband a year ago, and the whole month of June, because that was the time frame, that whole month of June, I didn't know I was off, but I wasn't myself. I didn't feel right. And it could be that it was depression. I couldn't tell you, because I have been depressed and it didn't feel that way, but it was off. And we slip. And the whole thing is just because we slip and fall down, just like a little kid, they fall down and we let them get themselves up. Then pretty soon when they fall the next time, they get up without crying. That's what we need to do.
Yeah. That's where my name Get Up and Grow comes from. The idea started with when life knocks us down, we have to get up and grow. Otherwise, we're going to keep on being knocked down, or we're going to keep on falling over the same obstacle. But getting up, and we get better at getting up. The more we get up, the more we practice it. And every time we learn and grow, we're better at it the next time.
And so Get Up and Grow is your program. And don't you have a podcast yourself?
I do. It's also called Get Up and Grow. I spend a lot of time and effort on divorce, because I actually have a platform for divorce itself called Fair Divorce that I founded in 2015. So we're celebrating 10 years with that. I'm very passionate about that. That's actually where the turn came around for me to start working with trauma specifically, because of my own experience. My own divorce was absolutely disastrous and a drawn out, very, very expensive situation. But yeah, my podcast, I spend a lot of time talking about divorce on all the issues related to it, co-parenting, again, high conflict, alienation, which is rife, and abuse.
Mm-hmm. Ron, I was lucky enough to be a guest on your show, and I know our conversation was very much so based around the divorce and understanding and the next steps and things like that. And I think, so often people just don't realize just how costly a divorce is. And it's not just financial out of your pocket. It costs you a lot of your soul. You pay for things with essence that you don't even have to pay.
Mm.
And so it changes you. It can jade you in a really bad direction. So many people will get a divorce and never want to have another relationship because they were treated so bad. And until they do the work, they can't move on. And so having the support, like your support in divorce, and then the Get Up and Grow program, those are super important for people that are going through a divorce, because without that support, you're going to pay with things you'll never be able to get back from your soul again.
Mm. I agree with you. And unfortunately, most parts of the world, even still today, don't understand the need for divorce support that covers everything. Traditionally, everybody goes down the litigation route, or the one alternative that is slowly starting to get traction is mediation. But still, the majority of people go for litigation, which is acrimonious, and it always turns into a disastrous fight or a battle, a war with several battles, costing a lot of money. So people don't understand the real need for a divorce coach like yourself, or a divorce mentor like I call myself, because you look at the whole picture. You look at every aspect of that. Like you said, the cost is not only financial. There's a lot. It brings about a tremendous amount of life changes. If there are children involved, you have to change and adapt your parenting style to help your children to get through it. There's so many things that you have to look at. And then the recovery after that, you literally have to rebuild your life or start building a new life from scratch for some people. It's complex. And it's really, really important to get proper guidance, proper support. And I keep on coming back to lived experience. I personally prefer to work with people who have had lived experience also, because all the academic training in the world cannot replace lived experience.
Oh, and I agree. Um, you know, in coaching aspects, I mean, we're all taught that one of the things that we do when we have a client that's going sideways, and it's like, let's stop, let's look at all the positive things that you've accomplished to this point. So lived experiences are great that way. And so often, and I can tell you, we're talking about the horrors of divorce. Well, I'm the one who left my ex-husband, and 6 months after I left him, I attempted suicide. Here I worked in that arena, and here I was in that horrible place. And the reason that happened is I didn't ask for help. So when we say that we pay, I almost made my children pay for the rest of their lives by taking my life, because my pain was so intense that I couldn't see them or the things around me. And I needed to reach out and ask for help, because that was bad. And after I experienced that, then I did reach out and ask for help. And it's that help that set me on the path that I am today.
I always say that when we get married, we involve so many people in the process. In fact, we have a huge celebration. Our families, our friends, everybody close to us are there. They share it. They're involved in the planning and the execution and everything. The marriage is a big thing. But when we separate or get divorced, suddenly everything's kept secret. Nobody knows exactly what's going on. Nobody else is involved in the process. We are suddenly isolated and all alone when we go through this. And we can probably talk for hours about why we do that, but it's hard for most people to say, I need help, please help me.
Ugh. And it's
And to
for men.
involve people, yeah, in our, the most of the time, the breakdown of our marriage, the things that happen, the high conflict, the struggles that escalate and become physical and abusive are things we are ashamed of. We don't want people to know. We'd rather keep it a secret and suffer in silence. And then we find ourselves in a desperate and destitute situation. And that's something that I also work hard on changing for people. When they come to me, that's one of the first things we look at. Who do you have in your corner? What support do you have? Who have you told exactly what's going on? The whole truth, the whole situation. We tend not to do that. And we can't go through the difficult things in life by ourselves. We just can't. We're not made that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't tell my family what was really going on in my relationship. They thought I left my husband for another man. Everybody did. And on the outside, that's kind of what it looked like. I found somebody that was in AA and was safe because my family wouldn't support me. They
Mm,
wouldn't support me. They were bad mouthing me and already, and it didn't have anything directly to do with this guy yet until after I left. And 4 years later, I was no longer with that man. It was a used situation unbeknownst to me. I just needed that safe
mm.
space for that time frame. But I was living with my mom and she decided to get me and my ex-husband back together for Thanksgiving
Oh,
and invited him and my children over, and he got me down on the floor in her living room in a chokehold. And my
good girl.
youngest son had to pull him off of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's when
Mm.
that was the last time her and him talked. He
Sure.
knew that she saw his true colors, so he didn't reach out to her, and she
Mhm.
decided that she wasn't going to reach out to him. She says, I never saw that side of him. I'm like, I tried to tell you. She
Yeah.
said, you thought that you left for somebody else.
It's amazing how people jump to conclusions and make assumptions that are most of the time incorrect. But then
Right.
I have to also say, when we have children, and especially when they're young, there is a degree of secrets that we have to keep, facts that we have to keep to ourselves to protect our children age
Hmm.
appropriately. And we also, it's hard to continue and co-parent with somebody who was that bad for you, or if the relationship was that toxic and you have to continue to co-parent with that person. It's damn difficult. So we do keep things quiet. We do tend to keep things under wraps to keep the peace, to be able to co-parent, to also protect the image, in front of the children or the rest of the family. So there are valid reasons for keeping some of it, but we all need someone we can trust. We all need, like you said, a safe space where we can let our hair down, some other person that can witness our suffering and our grief and the loss and the things that we're dealing with. We really do. We can't do without that.
Yeah. And so as we're getting ready to come to the end of this, Sinta, can you kind of tell me how people can find you? I know all your contact information will be on the bottom. Um, but if you could tell us how they could find you.
Yes, I have a website that's in my name, sintaebersohn.co.za. So you can search for that. And on there, you'll find links to all my other projects. If you're going through a divorce, you can go to fairdivorce.co.za. And you'll find everything there. And then Get Up and Grow, like we've talked about, that is an online community that you can join. You can sign up and join there. There's a whole library of resources, information, resilience tools, online courses, all sorts of things that you can imagine. So there are three places from which you can find me. And if you want to follow me on social media, everything is on my name, Sinta Ebersohn. And I'm on all the social media platforms.
Makes it easy to find you. So I am a certified divorce coach, meaning that I'm training the complexities of divorce. I've also dealt with the difficulties in a marriage. My father and my late husband all had dealt with abuse. So not only am I trained in divorce, I've experienced the abuse and know how to get out from here to there. You can find me and contact me through my email, coachtinalyn@gmail.com. That's CoachTinaLynn@gmail. On my website is divorcecoachspecialist.com. And I'm on social media, Facebook under Tina Lynn Huggins, that's Huggins. LinkedIn under Tina Huggins, Instagram under Divorce Coach Tina Lynn, and TikTok under Divorce Tina. So, Sinta, can you give some last minute advice to our viewers?
I'd love to tell somebody who's going through a divorce, something that's very important, and the basis for me to start with is to tell you that I believe you. Whatever you're going through, the horrible things you've experienced, the things you've seen your partner do that you never thought would be possible, that you never expected, I want you to know that I believe you. I've seen the worst of the worst. I've stood between people who are literally ready to kill each other physically. I know these bad things happen, and I believe you. And there is a way for you to move forward, always.
So very good. And my advice is, and I've given this in the last few shows, is to ask for help. Share your story with those closest to you, because when it's time for you to make your exit, your family are going to be the ones that'll be there. In my case, I didn't share any of my information, so my family wasn't there. They believed him as opposed to me because I didn't share with them. So start sharing, even if it's just little bits here and little bits there, until you can inform them of what's really going on in your life. And then reach out for help, because getting out of this situation can be life-threatening. So it's important that it's done right and that you have an exit plan in place. So in Sinta's there, she can help you with the emotional end of this as well as going through your divorce. So she's got the get up and grow aspect that can help you, and definitely help you after the fact, because again, you have to take care of this person in order to be able to take care of any of this out here. So very good. So many people, including myself, and you heard me talk about this earlier, get to a bad place where we're considering suicide. Please don't. There is another day coming. This too shall pass. If you are dealing with suicidal thoughts, please call 988. And if you're in the Netherlands, you can dial 113. Talk to somebody, deal with the situation right here, right now, until we can get you help there to help support you out of this situation. If you are in a situation where you need the police, if there's violence going on, here in the States, it's 911. In the UK, it's 999. And in the Netherlands, it's 112. Once you get the police there, press charges. Those charges are your key out of the relationship. Do not drop those charges. Once you drop those charges, what comes after the charges is dropped is generally much more difficult or worse than what happened to you prior. So this is your time. This is your chance to get out. And the domestic violence hotline is 800-799-7233. That number again is 800-799-7233. And if this has been helpful for you, please like, comment, and share so that it can help others. Thank you so much for being here, Sinta.
Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful. I'm honored. Thanks, Tina.
Thank you. This has been a very wonderful conversation. So again, thank you.
Yeah, fantastic.